What is up, gang? This will be another unboxing and review of some knives by Rogan USA, his knife division. We will be reviewing the RFK XD, which stands for Rogan Field Knife Extra Duty. Then we have the Rogan Recon and the Rogan Raven. We will be starting with the Raven. Let's see, I will say the dimensions of each knife. The RFK XD, the handle is 5 inches. The blade is roughly 3 3/4 inches, a Tanto style blade. The thickness is 1/4 inch, and the overall length is about 8 7/8 inches, so almost 9 inches. And it is made, like I said, of a 1/4 inch chunk of 1075 steel. Then we have the Raven. It is 1095 steel. Its dimensions are: the blade is 3 inches, the handle is 3 1/4 inches, overall length is 6 1/4 inches, and the thickness is 1/8 inch. The Rogan Recon, its dimensions are: overall length 8 inches, handle length 4 inches, blade length 4 inches. So pretty simple. And the Recon and the Raven are both 1095 steel. The Recon comes in at 5/32 thickness. And right about here is where I get pleasantly surprised by the Rogan Raven in its chopping ability. This little knife really chops well. It chops far above its weight. Now, this is where I thought that the Recon underperformed a little bit, because if you've noticed, the blade shape of the Recon and the Raven are the same. The Raven is just a little bit smaller. So I assume since the little Raven chops so well that the Recon would chop even better since it's a larger version of the Raven. But it doesn't chop that as well as I expected it to. One thing with these knives is they are all single beveled or chisel ground, and that lends to the feather sticking ability of them. They are pretty good carvers and feather stickers, I think, just for the mere fact that, I mean, wood chisels are single bevel. So when it comes to carving with them, they do an excellent job. Speaking of the single bevel nature of these knives, the one thing I did notice when it came to the single bevel behaving different than a double bevel knife or a regular grind knife, however you would describe it, the single bevel, it seemed when batoning, it kind of wanted to go a certain way. You'll see it, and I'll try to point it out whenever it does it, that it just kind of leads with that bevel. It, like, when you hit it, it wants to kind of almost turn the way the bevel is. And I'm not really saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying to notice and be aware of it, because whenever you start driving it in, it's going to kind of turn with that bevel. Here you can see it from this angle. When I strike down on it, the blade kind of turns towards the beveled side. I messed my camera angle up here a little bit. I should have been paying attention better. But you'll get to see it chop down through. But where I'm chopping is a knot in that stick. So if you don't know, a knotty or knotted area on a stick or branch is more difficult to cut through than just the straight grained areas. The RFK-XD has a nice weight forward design that makes it an excellent chopper because of how the finger choil is, and it gives it that almost a tracker or a kukri type recurve almost at the front that puts the weight forward and makes it chop very, very well. Now this is where the RFK-XD performed better than I thought it would. It actually did much better at feather sticking than I thought it would, and the Tanto tip did better at feather sticking than I imagined. I didn't think it would do that well, and it did very well. Now, this is just a tip test to test the strength of the tips and the points on all the blades. I tried to be careful to alternate sides and directions that I was bending it as I drove it into the stump and then bended it over. I wanted to bend it with the bevel and against the bevel, since it's a single bevel, and that would stress both sides. Now the RFK XD just is a beast. It's a 1/4 inch thick, and the chisel grind and the Tanto tip in conjunction create a very strong tip, and I cranked on it pretty hard, and there was no give or anything. Here is a little enhanced tip test on just the RFK XD because of its more sturdy nature. I drive it in and then I strike it from the side while it's still stuck in the log to see if that will do any damage. Here I am doing the tip test with the Recon, and I baton it in a little bit and bend it over twice, and it fails. I have basically an immediate breakout on the tip, and then I drive it in again and snap it over and break it off 2 times. You are about to witness total tip failure. After it fails twice, I continue to test the tip to see if it will just keep breaking, and it does not. It breaks the initial 2 times, and it does not break again. And so the damage you see is only the damage from the 2 breaks. Now, for about as unimpressed and disappointed as I was with the Recon and the tip breakouts, I was impressed with the Raven and its ability to not break out or the tip break off at all. And it has the same blade shape and style as the Recon. So that leads me to believe that the Recon's heat treat perhaps got a little too brittle and caused that tip failure on the Recon. And my final test is to see how well each one strikes a ferrocerium rod. The Raven does about average, mediocre, not the greatest. The Recon does very well, and the RFK XD does very well. The RFK XD, I use the finger choil part where you can choke up a little bit. I use that part to strike it, and it does wonderful. All right, gang. In conclusion, I have written down the statistics of what I did to test them. The RFK XD, feather sticking and carving, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Chopping, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Batoning, I gave it a 9. Ferro rod, I gave it a 9. Tip test, I gave it a 10. The Recon, feather stick, I gave it a 7. Chopping, I gave it a 6. Batoning, I gave it a 7. Ferro rod, I gave it an 8. Tip test, it failed, so I gave it a fail. The Raven, feather sticking carving, I gave it a 7. Chopping, I gave it an 8.5 because it chopped well over its weight for all the bigger it is. Batoning, I gave it a 7. Ferro rod, I gave it a 5. It did the least well of the 3 knives of striking a ferro rod. And the tip test, I gave it an 8 because it did better than I thought it would because of the recon breaking out. I thought that the Raven would also break out, and it did not. It proved to be a very strong little knife, and I believe it would be a good competitor against like an Essie Azula or something like that. I think this whole line of knives would be good competitors for the Essie line of knives. They're made of the same materials basically. 1095 is usually what Essie uses. I know they've stepped it up a little bit, and they use I think S35V or S30V, something like that, on some of their nicer models. But they started out with 1095. I know the one is 1075, the RFK XD, but it performed just as well, if not better, than the 1095 because it didn't break, but it's a 1/4 inch thick as to where the Recon was 5/32 thick. So you have variables, and I believe the heat treat went wrong on the Recon, and I believe that's why the tip broke. But I could be wrong, and I'm going to be sending it back to Rogan and trying to get to basically cash in the warranty on it and see if I can get another Recon in return. And when that happens, I will let you know, gang. And until next time, peace out.